The problem that many of us have to objectivity when it comes to things like justice, when it comes to issues that we are faced with today. Too many of us, when we hear this, when we hear what's going on, we automatically jump to a conclusion before we know the facts or anything. It really doesn't even matter. And so, because we just know, it's my heart, it's the hunches that we have. But the question is, where do we get those? You see, what I'm not saying is that it's the emotions that many times guides our decision making. What I'm not saying is that emotions are bad. Emotions are a good place to tell you where you are, but they're a terrible place to guide your decision making. And so what these emotions are, our heart and our hunches that we have, just really tell us that where we are. And we need to put them in a proper place. But the other thing is that our humanity, or my humanity, see, the reality is that it's always going to limit us from knowing everything. We're not sovereign. We're not omnipresent. We're not all-knowing. But another one is my history, my past. What are the things that keep you? That we recognize is that it's our past that shapes our current perspectives. No one is coming with this pure objectivity into any situation. You see, and the last one is our heritage, or my heritage. You see, our worldviews are, whether we like it or not, influenced by our culture. You see, and I think the first thing that when he talks about the golden rule that Christ is calling us to do, especially in light of this, is that we need to first step back and understand and do some personal evaluations. And that we need to personally go through and understand that we're not coming at it from a purely objective standpoint. Russell Moore, the president of Ethics and Religious Liberty, says this as it relates to how our culture impacts us. He says this: white Americans tend, in public polling, to view the presenting situations as though they exist in isolation, dealing only with the known facts of the case at hand, of whether there is evidence of murder. Black Americans, polls show, tend to view these crises through a wider lens. The question of whether African American youth are too often profiled and killed in America. You see, what the president, Russell Moore, is saying, he's ultimately saying, he says, listen, understand that there's a cultural bias that has been shaped through your history, through your heritage, that brings about a certain approach, and that we just need to recognize that. You see, I think this is a very important factor. And so what I want to do for just a few minutes is that I want to give you, and just give you a little transparency, even myself, as I begin to approach this subject matter. You see, because when I hear about things like the Trayvon Martin, when I hear about the things like the Eric Garner, I immediately get frustrated. When I begin to search the YouTube channels, and I just begin to see and just type in police brutality, I begin to get frustrated. But is it because of some objective view that I know? No, it's based upon the history. It's based upon my past. It's based upon my heritage. You see, and so what we're saying is that none of us are viewing this in isolation. There's a certain reality that we have, and it's shaped off our past. And so Jesus says in this golden rule, treat others in the way you want to be treated. You see, we got to understand that what Jesus is saying, he says, treat others in the way that you want to be treated. That he's calling us to personally reflect and to recognize that there's a certain way, and there's a certain past, and there's a certain history and a heritage that is shaping your current reality.